Yo, Joe. Talking comics, here's your host. It's A Real American Brian.
We're back to read some more G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. Today we're getting into issue 4. We got some Joes on the cover here. Rock and Roll, Snake Eyes, Hawk, Scarlet, some green shirts, all charging into action. Bob Hall and Al Milgram are given the cover credits. It isn't my favorite cover, but it gets the job done. And page 1, Operation Wingfield. Right off the bat, we see something different. Herb Trimpe doing the plot and art on this issue, with Larry just credited with scripts. We are immediately introduced to this gentleman. All we know at this point is that he has a strike first hat and is sounding off like a drill sergeant. And he has an awesome mustache. As we begin to learn a little bit more here, these are fresh recruits, and the leader is Wingfield. His wife, Sherry, and Carthers advise him to not use live ammunition, but he doesn't listen and fires at the new recruits doing their exercise. He hits one of the recruits and refuses him medical treatment, tells him that he'll get a field dressing and that is it. So we've established that Wingfield is just a super nice guy. We see that all this has been footage presented to the G.I. Joes. Wingfield is the leader of a militia that is being funded by Cobra. They are going to send a 3-man team of Hawk, Grunt, and Snake Eyes to infiltrate the Strike First group. During this, we also get Stalker referred to as Ranger, which is accurate, he is a Ranger, but that is how he will be referred to throughout the issue, not by his code name. It's a little strange. Hawk and Grunt posing as new recruits to the cause. Wingfield tells the new recruits that they must become ready for the collapse of civilization, while the Joes spot a building they suspect to be the ammo dump or weapons house of some kind. The Joes discuss the security of the site and what intel they have gathered before getting up early and beginning Wingfield's boot camp. And during the boot camp, they are intentionally holding back to try and not look too amazing as soldiers. But even when they're holding back, they are still much better than the other recruits. And Snake Eyes here, we have him writing down everything he sees at the camp, including a possible nuclear-capable bomber. He makes plans to take a closer look. Snake Eyes goes into great detail in his writing down all of his thoughts. Grunt and Hawk sneak out with their late-night investigation, and some of the top cadre of First Strike are called to a late-night meeting. So everyone's active late at night in this camp, apparently. Snake Eyes sneaks into the meeting as we hear that Strike First is about to live up to their name and take the offensive. Right away on the first panel of this page, we get some important information. Cobra has provided a silent alarm for the armory that Hawk and Grunt are headed towards right now, but they have also provided them with 2 nuclear missiles. Then Wingfield lays out his plan. They're going to take one of the nukes to Russia and attack them. Russia will assume it was an American attack and retaliate, and after the 2 countries have wiped each other out, they will come out of their bunker and build a new world. As a failsafe, they have the second nuke underground, and if they are ever attacked in their camp, they will set it off to do as much counter damage as they can. So this isn't sounding too good for the Joes. This is all a pretty dastardly plan here. But get our Joes who get a look into the armory and can't believe the rows of tanks that Cobra has supplied them. And meanwhile, news of the silent alarm getting tripped spreads. The leaders are told to get all of their troops. The Strike Force team or Strike Force recruits surround the armory and start heading in. Grunt and Hawk begin taking on the entire group themselves, just tossing around recruits like it's nothing. The Joes manage to take out a dozen men, but are finally overcome and taken to Wingfield. Wingfield says there's no reason to interrogate them. They're just take them to the hole and get rid of them. He also realizes that he has to act now with his plan. There is no time to waste. Snake Eyes breaks into the communication hut and begins sending out a signal. G.I. Joe Command receives Snake Eyes' signal, and Grunt and Hawk are marched to the hole. At the last second, Snake Eyes jumps out of a tree and saves them. Good thing they only sent 2 guards to take care of the Joes that just took out a dozen men. I mean, if they had, properly done this situation, we may have a whole different Joe story. But bad guys aren't very smart, I guess. The Joes compare notes, and Snake Eyes shows them his whole thought journal that he has, and mentions the bomber, and the bomber takes off right over their heads, headed for Russia. Hawk heads off to run down a bomber that we saw in the previous panel was already at treetop level, so I'm not sure what his plan at this point is, but he has a plan. The other Joes head back to keep an eye on Wingfield. Grunt and Snake Eyes put a plan together to cover each other as they move in closer. Grunt is spotted and they fire at him. He hides behind a rock as Snake Eyes continues on. Wingfield tells his wife that they are putting Plan Alpha into effect, and all the women and children are to be armed. Snake Eyes sees all the children in the building and sends a signal to Grunt to hold fire. While back at the airstrip, Hawk steals a jet that was Snake Eyes previously mentioned was under repairs, and he takes off after the bomber. And the repair that the jet was in for was a radio, so the radio's busted, Hawk has no radio to work with, and the bomber pilot is informed that someone took a jet and is coming for him. Snake Eyes gets back to Grunt and flashes him a look. Must have been some serious body language from a completely masked man, but whatever, it worked. The look came across. Hawk tracks down the bomber in the air, but can't radio the plane to bail out and give up, so he attempts to shoot the fuel tanks, and so that way he'll have time to bail out if he chooses to. But after shooting the plane, he watches as no one ejects before it hits the water. Wingfield gets word that the bomber has been shot down and proceeds with his backup plan, activating the underground nuke that only he can stop once it has been activated. A mother attempts to take her child and leave the base, while Wingfield threatens to shoot her for deserting them. He asks his wife to back him up. His wife pulls out her gun and lowers it and says, "Don't worry, I know what to do." Just as we see the Joe's backup team landing, Sherry shoots her husband in the back as the Joes rush in and tell everyone to drop their weapons. We have Grunt in this last panel in a very Kirby-esque pose. It's pretty awesome. Hawk apparently burned out the jet engine getting back in time, and Sherry informs him that the underground nuke timer has been set and only her husband knew how to stop it. It's impossible. But that word doesn't exist for the Joe team. Zap is called in and told he has 5 minutes to save them all. Zap, very familiar with nukes apparently, determines that he needs to cut through the spokes holding the detonator while someone else holds it, stopping it from falling. Zap cuts through the 4 spokes and Grunt is having trouble holding the detonator up, but he is able to pull it free. Hawk lets him know that there was no contamination leak and he doesn't need to worry about any radiation. He also tells him the timer was running fast and he pulled it out with seconds to spare. So thank you very much for saving everybody there. And we come to the end of this adventure. This was a nice self-contained story with Cobra influences, but we had a new homegrown threat, which was interesting. Seeing the Joes aren't just specifically fighting Cobra, but fighting all threats that exist in America and the world. I like the small group of Joes working together to figure things out. This was a pretty exciting issue. The Joes were put into some rough spots, and the surprise ending with Wingfield getting shot by his wife was pretty great. So my favorite panel in this one is this first panel here on this page. The artwork isn't super exciting on it. It's just a dude standing around. But we would get all this important information on the plot, not just their overall plan of they have nukes, but that the Joes are walking into a trap as well. So I enjoyed this story. This was a nice, like I said, self-contained, cool little adventure with a militia that was funded by Cobra, but wasn't specifically Cobra. I'm going to give this issue 4 flag points. I had a lot of fun with it. And that is issue 4. Knowing is half the battle, and now you know. So subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video where we dive into issue 5.
So long from Brian. Until next time, same Brian time, same Brian channel.